right, we're going to take a look at cascading style sheets, CSS. This is a primer, a first way, and the way I'm approaching it is, well, you got some reading and background to do, and do that, and you have some exercises, and they'll be, quote, graded. They're pretty straightforward, but try to internalize it because there is a lot that's going on, and my way of having you learn, and I think an excellent way to learn IT, is go in with a particular objective. And that way, it's tell a lot how, what the water's like by jumping in and paddling to the side rather than talking about the theory of swimming and getting wet. So this is an exercise you have. I will be speaking to it. It's not as though, and be clear that I'm not going to do the exercise, and if you just do what I show you, you will work it out, look at the details, but I'm not going to try to fool you and show you a few of the techniques. So a lot of the structure is what you'll need to do, but I might not show you every little detail, leaving some things for you. All right, so we have this assignment. We'll come back to it. But here's the idea. I'm up in the VM, and I'm in code here. And this is my synopsis for chapter 1 without any style. So here's the HTML, and one thing I've asked you to do with your HTML is take out any style tags you have, whether they're inline styles, internal styles, and leave all the styling to a reference. So when you read the chapters, you read about, it's called external styling, and the way we get that is up in our head element. To use, it's just like this, link rel equal style sheet, and then a space and href, and where on your site, or it might be out on the World Wide Web too, but a URL, this one's going to be relative to where it's going to find that. And this one says, we'll go up to the root. There's a file called styles, and in that you're going to find a synopsis CSS. So what I did in my folder here, let me just get the names instead back. I made a folder, and this is outlined in the assignment. It says, make a folder called styles, and in the styles make a file called synopsis CSS. And so this is the idea that on a website we might have lots of style files, and this is the set of styles we want to apply to all our synopses. I'll be doing chapter 1. You make sure you do all 6, but the beauty is once you get it set up for one chapter, those styles, just by including this one statement and doing some changes a little bit in the structure that I'll show you about, then those styles will manifest to all your synopses. And if down the road you say, gosh, I'd like to have a different look and feel for these, well, you just change the one synopsis CSS, and then next time anybody loads up that synopsis, they will get the new format. All right, so there's no style tags up here, no inline styles, and the reason I am referring to this, but right now this synopsis file is empty. Well, actually, I created all the styles I wanted to see, then hid that away because I don't want to show you. You get to create it. So there really are no styles defined. And so when I render the page, well, I get this. Okay, it renders, and every browser has a set of defaults. How did it decide how big was going to be a H1 heading, which is kind of what I do for that? How big is an H2? Right here, HTML Bible is in a site. Okay, so by default it decides to italicize that. This is the default format for a link, by highlighting it in blue, and there's that href there, and it happens to be an H4, but so it works, and everything is a left to all the way, uses up all the space. It leaves a little white on the sides, but there's a ton that was done by default, because the browser has to have some settings. And one way to look at what styles do, or one of the biggest things they do, is override that default with what it is that we want. Okay, and so one thing we learned, and for our synopsis, the requirement is to have a what I call that centered layout. Not that every line is centered, but just there's some white space on the side. And one way that we learned to do that that we're not going to use anymore is to left auto and margin right. And a lot of you have been using then the width 65% or 60%. Okay, now if I save that, okay, that's called inline styles. And it works in the sense that, okay, if I get this, then I get more. It looks like kind of a notebook page, just something for a synopsis, maybe not as intimidating to read with the eye having to go all the way left and all the way right, especially on a wide screen. So that did it, but from a development point of view, that's not good. It's kind of hidden well down into the HTML. So if we style these paragraphs, and if we wanted to have each of these paragraphs say indent, and we do, we'd have to add that to an inline element to every paragraph. And if we have multiple documents, which we do, we'd have to do it in every paragraph in every document. But that is called inline styling, and it should be avoided. I'll just say period there, unless you're absolutely positively sure that that one element is the only element ever going to have that particular style. Even then, probably put it up in a style block up in the in the head portion, make it an internal. So now that I've removed that, well, that style goes away. A second, and it's called an internal. Style, and you can set up your styles up in the header, and I think I got that syntax right. So this says, oh, here's a style that I would like to apply to the whole this particular HTML file. Now, since there's only one body, it only applies in one spot. There, I think that needed to come out. And I hope I got this right. But we could define a paragraph style that would apply to every paragraph in the document. And let's see if it does, if I save that and refresh. Okay, so that's another way to get that. That just says, okay, in this document, when you do see that, this does have the advantage. If I did want to set a paragraph style, and that's something that we're going to do, I can do that like this. So the braces talk about, just collect all the styles that go along with one thing. I saved it, refreshing, and now all the paragraphs indent. It turns out we don't want them all to indent. We want those that are part of in the assignment. That's why I ask you to read it. But that indented every paragraph, because that's kind of what that cascading is. We've defined the style for the document. So everything time it sees, oh, I see, here's a paragraph, then I've been asked to indent it. So at least by having it up in the header, that is the style block or the style element, then I didn't have to change it for every paragraph individually. Okay, I could say it once and it was understood for every paragraph individually. So this is better than inline styling, because at least it's a standard to put it in the header, and if it's in the header, then people know where to look for it if they're trying to update, or why did this appear this way, I need to reformat it. But in our case, and kind of on purpose, by the way, I designed you have to do all those effing, if you will, synopses. Not only did you have to read the chapter and write some, but now we have this idea, okay, there's multiple pages that are going to get the same treatment, and I could copy and paste this, but then if I need to change it and make it 10 pixels or something else, then I've got to change every document. So this is also just a little bit limited. The preference is to move all that style stuff. I'm just going to get rid of it here. Okay. Save that. Just prove to you by going back to the page. Okay, so now it's unstyled. But put all that in this file that we've referenced. And you can have more than one style sheet referenced. I forget exactly how ties are broke. What if, we give like 3 different definitions for what to do with the paragraph? Maybe the last one wins, and that kind of thing. We can look at that. I'm not ready to go into that right now. But instead, what we would do is say, okay, we want to do something like, I don't want to have that jump over like that. Yeah, I'll live with it. I don't know how to get that little thing to go with it. Anyway, we can still see what we're needing to see. So I'm going to paste that in. It's not quite right as it stands, but in a cascading style sheet, /* starts a comment and // ends a comment. So you can have multi-line comments. If you just want one line, then you put the //. So I recommend you put it there. I don't know if I'm going to take points off if I don't see it, but it's helpful. And in this case, if we want, and I'll just do the body bit, it's the same basic thing that we've already done. The style doesn't change much, but I've put it in this, and one of the changes I ask you to make after you set up your synopsis CSS is to make it a style sheet that each of your synopsis points to, and that way, if all goes well, sometimes I found that when it's a style sheet, and I accidentally minimized it, and you make the changes, it seems to take a little bit to maybe even clear the browser to show up. I just wanted to prove that it would happen, and it should happen. I might have to clear my buffer, or I'm just going to quickly go over here to Chrome. Okay, so it did take that style. I've noticed sometimes when you do style sheets, and we just might have to clear our browser cache, but that style was in effect. And I should probably look up how to move this. I got a cat kind of coming here just all across. Well, great. So the idea is that we put then all our styles into this sheet. So one of the things, the style sheet, one of the requirements for all, just seeing if, I don't know how to get that to take the new with that. You kind of probably have to do some browser history stuff. So we'll hope that Chrome is a little bit better about keeping up with the changes. So now looking at, so all this part says, some of the changes that you're going to need to make. If we look in at the HTML, not only did we have a style sheet, but I've asked you to your 3 paragraphs of discussion, should be embedded or embraced part of a element called a section. And you've read about this. This has sort of the semantic understanding that, okay, I'm defining a section of my document. Like, this is a section 3 about this, but this is going to be just our main section, and give it an ID main section. One of the things about style sheets is you can say, I want some styles to apply just to element, usually if it's an ID, one element that have the ID main section. I also asked you to put a header inside, like maybe something chapter summary. One of the standards for HTML is if you're calling something a section, then the first thing that should be in there is some kind of header to describe the section. Otherwise, you'll get a validation issue. And so that's why I said, put that in there. And then we end the section. And then I asked you to put a paragraph that I gave you in the assignment outside of the section, so we can see the effect of paragraphs that receive the main section selector, ID selector formatting, and outside. And the one other change that I ask you to make is the first paragraph in your synopsis gets a class equal to lead paragraph. Okay, and so as you probably read this, we can define styles that we would like to apply just to elements where somebody says this particular element is a lead paragraph, and we can work from there. Okay, so the rest is getting your styles to do the right things in the right place. Okay, so yeah, I've already showed you how to do this one. So as a default, for instance, citations are italicized. Maybe if we wanted, and I forget what I think it's going to be straight up and underlined, but if we wanted the citation tags, so right without having made a selector, the things I'm defining here, anytime I see a body element, do this. Anytime I see a cite element, do this. And all right, so I'm not taking off the italicize. I think I asked you to do that, but what I have done is saying, oh, I would like it to be underlined as well. Okay, and so that applied it there. There's also a citation down in that bottom paragraph. Okay, the citing back to the course. So that one change and all the citations obey. Now again, when you do your assignment, make sure that you're doing everything I asked for. I'm liking the headers centered, and so if I make that part of the style sheet, and I'm saving the style sheet before I go try to refresh the HTML, so that got the H1 header to be centered. Okay, and so that's kind of the idea. Anything, if we want elements to appear a certain way, we do it. I do ask you, when you're doing style sheets, sometimes padding is an important thing. I ask you to do something with the A anytime you have a link, and there should be one link in there. It goes back to the index. Okay, and it goes back to the index, but I ask you to do something with maybe giving it a background color that's a little darker, and within that, and sometimes when you have several things, the notion, I don't know if this has a format document, whether it does, the real style I just reformatted is to kind of spread it out and have it kind of look like this, so you can see all the parameters going down. Background color blue. Color would be the color of the thing. Yeah, maybe an antique white. I'm just kind of showing you. So this kind of is going to give it a different look, almost reverse. It's going to have a background that's blue. Let me save it and show you kind of what I mean. And something like this. Yeah, that turned the link to that. So one thing about padding, there isn't much extra blue around this to make it stand out and look a little bit like a button. That was my notion. So there is, anytime you want a little more space on the inside, you could use padding, and you can use it left, right, up, or low. You can define them all in one, but I'm just doing padding 5. Oops, I wanted it to be px. And that says put 5 pixels. Save it. Go back here and refresh it. And what that did was make this look a little bit more like a button. In fact, and there's ways you could round the corners and then it would look like a button. And when I center my, that's an H4 for me. When I center that, it would come to the center. But if yours isn't in a heading, it's not important. But the idea is that it just looks a little more like a button. And some of this, I've got to admit that I put in the assignment, is just making you apply styles for the sake of applying styles, because that's what we're learning. I can't argue that everything that I have you do is, oh gosh, that made the document, its layout, ever so much better. But it is practice with the idea. Okay, so things that you put here apply just into the apply to everything in the document. If you want to have the styles apply to where you've given an ID, then we have main section, and so you start it with a pound sign. That's kind of going to be an element ID, and I'm getting a warning to not use empty rule sets. I haven't defined any styles, but that means it's going to look in the HTML, which is here, for this. So kind of that falls inside of here, and this is where, and I think I say something in the assignment that I'd like the paragraphs in your summary, not overall, to have to be indented. Well, it turns out not all the paragraphs, but some, as we'll see. But I'm just showing the effect by putting this paragraph style in there. Notice that only the paragraphs that were in that section, okay, indented. This one didn't, because that particular style for the P was just to do within the bounds of that section setting. All right, so but anything you put in there, it's going to be, and I'm going to format document, just keep me going right. You can do things in there. Another little trick is I ask you to do a border, and you can define the pieces, but the three things you need for getting a border on something is to, a color, a width, and do you want it dotted and that kind of thing. And I think I asked you to put a background color on just that section. Maybe here I'll choose a nice aquamarine. I don't know if that's the best color. I think I asked you for something light but not white. And so what that did was give us this. So this is now kind of set out. I think a bisque or an off-white or a light gray would be a lot better than the aquamarine, but I'm not going to judge on style, just that you do it. But again, we have that issue kind of with padding. I'd like there to be like a little, margin is on the outside of an element, but padding is on the inside. So I'd like a little skosh more room, not white space, but blue space in this case, or aquamarine space in there. So while I'm within main section, and another way, I think it's going to be top. It's top, right, left. Anyway, there's something about the order. I'm making them all the same, so this really has the same effect of just saying padding 10x. And to me, I'm going to try to keep those guys together because they all have to do with how this thing appears then on the page. So I save that and do it. And see, now it kind of comes in, just looks gave a little more padding on top. Maybe I might look back and say, oh, that's a little bit too much space by the time I get that title, chapter, summary in there, and that kind of thing. So things that you want to apply to just that section, that, back in the HTML, it had the ID. Back in the HTML, it had ID main section, so that's going to go. If we wanted a different format for H4, a different thing to happen with H4, then the H4 that's here. And I think I required you 2 levels of heading. I don't know that you might have an H4 for your return to index, and that's fine if you put it in a paragraph tag or something like that. But if I want a different format, I can go in there. Okay. And then maybe the last little bit that I want to kind of highlight, we have this notion that we have a lead paragraph. Okay, and notice in the HTML, this first paragraph, I said class equal lead paragraph, but it's a lead paragraph that's in main section. So let's come over here to our synopsis, and so within main section, I'm going to do what's called a class selector. That begins with a dot. And what that says is if you see something with a class called lead paragraph, while you're in a element that has ID main section, then the format we want, and I think I asked you to let's not indent the first paragraph, the lead paragraph, and is it font weight? Font weight. And just make the lead paragraph have being bold-faced and not indented. And so I saved that. Just going to refresh and just show you the effect of that. Yeah, so that kind of changes the kind of the look there. Now kind of looks like an H4 level heading inside there, but that's okay. And I think one thing that I ask you to do, and just is also work with the fonts inside the main section. And so realize that to get a font set up, and ask you to use a sans serif font. There's something I've read that says for reading on screen a sans serif font, and what the sans serif means we'll show you in a second. So I ask you to choose one. This is the most common. That's a sans serif font 2. Did I say 12 point? Something like that. I'm just trying not to mislead you. But supposedly sans serif fonts are easier to read on the screen. Okay, and so that changed then the font for main section to something. And what is a serif? When you look at these are serifed fonts. They have little doohickeys like at the end of the S, at the bottom of the I. A sans serif or straight cut off some of that. Supposedly it's easier to read things that are on screen if they have no serifs. Now I don't know that that's true, but that was the motivation for making this happen. Okay, so that's really the sense of how CSS works. Now on a complicated website, they layer, and we'll see some of that, and we see a little bit of it here. This is the lead paragraph for a main section. If I tried to make this other paragraph that's down at the bottom a lead paragraph, I'm not sure what would happen, but I don't know that it's defined because there's that lead paragraph we have goes in for the main section. So I kind of want to review. I think I've shown you probably how to do most, if not all of this. I do have, just in case you forgot that mind picture, something like this. If your return to index isn't centered, then that's okay if it's just a P paragraph. But the idea, I think this is underlined and straight up. So you have a couple of little format things to do as well. But the idea is to get the structure and stuff in place so that works. And then in your case, don't forget to make sure then once you've got this set up, you have to go to every one of your other syllabi, take out any. I should not be able to find style equal in there, just this relative this link basically to a style sheet, and that holds all your styles. But once you have that set up for all your synopses, then if we ever decide, oh, we're going to change kind of the format, look and feel, or we want a different format for printing, it can be done very easily by changing the style like we should, and let the HTML describe sort of the semantics, if you will, of the document. Okay, and I think that's about all I've got to say. Oh yeah, and don't forget to validate. Once you've made all those changes, it's going to be important that you still have a valid HTML. And I'm going to take a chance here and hope that it validates, but been here before, I know. Yay! So good, but always, anytime you change anything on your site, then always make sure that the resulting meets those professional standards. So I think that's enough to get you going, and of course kind of reach out and ding back if not. You don't have to apply style sheets to About Me and Code Demo and the others, at least not yet. I might come up, where they really come into play is when you have several things and you'd like to have them all have the same look and feel without having to, oh gosh, copy and paste, and I copy and pasted a different font in this one. The style sheet takes care of it. All right, well, take care.